are becoming quite common in the region or in this part of the municipality. As presented in the first reading, this application is very much in keeping with the spirit of our municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw. The development will be a private road that has access off an existing right of way, which connects to the public road, the Valley Road. The basis for a new private road has been put in place, Your Worship, but in order to get the full subdivision approval, we require the rezoning to move forward. Again, as mentioned, the property itself is in an area that I would say would be in high demand for this type of development. It's still very well wooded, so I think there's a lot of privacy opportunities as new homes are developed and new projects come forward in the area. There is another subdivision not far from this that actually power is being installed as we speak. So this is an application that staff supported in our presentations in the past and is part of the staff report. The one thing I will note is that on one of the PIDs, the second PID, 25267402, it's only a portion of the lot that we're rezoning. So just want to make that clear to council. And maybe the clerk can just bring up that page there. I think we're going to just try to pull it up a little further from the report. As part of the subdivision application, a concept plan was submitted by the applicant to show how the lots would be laid out, and that clearly indicates the portion of the lot that portion of that PID that's being requested for rezoning. So on that plan, it outlines the area in which that second PID is only a portion, Your Worship, not to be repetitive. And then there is a concept plan that we have as part of the application that laid that out. So once we go through this process, the public hearing, council gets the second reading. If the rezoning is approved, we'll have very good information to update the zoning maps on that portion of that PID or that legal parcel. So, Your Worship, unless there's specific questions on the application, I'd be willing to entertain those at this point or give clarity on anything that's in the report. So the one thing I should mention, sorry, Your Worship, is that there were no public inquiries, both written. We had no requests to present today at the public hearing. And that's what I can tell you from the process that leads up to this. So.
Thank you, Mr. Boone, very much for that. So I just have to follow the process to ask that very question. So have we had any written submissions for the record?
No, and I did check with the clerk, which all those written submissions would come to clerk, and I didn't have any phone inquiries, which we would respond to as well, Your Worship.
Thank you. And do we have any requests from the public to speak on the matter today before council?
No official request to speak today, but as an open hearing, people can show up, as you know, Your Worship.
So yeah, so I don't know if anyone's here that wants to speak to this or not. I don't see anyone. The last thing is, do we have any additional comments from the applicant themselves?
At this point, no formal presentation, but we're here to answer any questions, and I appreciate they're showing up to do so, Your Worship.
Yeah, thank you. We do appreciate them being here. So any additional comments or questions from any councillors for Mr. Boone or staff in regards to this agenda item? Seeing none. Thank you, sir, for that. Thank you, folks, for being here today. I'll now close the hearing, and that'll move for a second reading next month. Thank you. Thank you, folks, for being here. Thank you, Mr. Boone. Appreciate that. Public hearing is now closed. Number 3 in the agenda item, strategic priority issues, which we do not have any for today, nor major organizational items for today. Organizational policy and bylaw items, 5.1, first reading, rezoning Rural Rushton Building Movers 2020 Limited, Little River. Mr. Boone, I believe you're going to speak to this as well.
Yeah, apologies, Your Worship. I was just talking to the applicant. Thank you, Your Worship. This is a first reading. The property PID 25446477. It's owned by Rural Rushton Building Movers 2020 Limited. It's in Little River, but to describe the parcel, so council members are aware, this is a property that's located kind of in between Little River Road and Sunset Avenue. So it would be the northwest end of what they now call 7 Lee Way. 7 Lee Way is a road that's under construction and development within the town boundaries of Oxford. And this would be a continuation of that road into the county portion of the PID. We have had the report presented. The recommendation is for council to approve first reading and move the application forward. It's a development, your worship, that in order for the new road to be constructed, either public or private, it requires the rezoning to take place. This allows to create smaller lot sizes, but also allows for the ability to have a private or public road considered by council at a later date. Certainly in keeping with the new kind of approach to this neighborhood, which has gone from essentially, your worship, being resource-based land or agricultural type based land to being a demand for residential development, obviously in close proximity to the town, but leading into the county properties as well. The rezoning is to go from, sorry, your worship, the rezoning is to move to the low density residential. The reason we requested that does permit the ability for the road construction in the future, as well as it does bring the lot sizes down smaller, whether it's on site sewer and or potentially for central sewer systems in the future. That's not part of the application at this point, but just a consideration within the overall application. So again, I think the low density intention is in keeping with the spirit of the municipal planning strategy and the land use bylaw. There's no significant financial implications at this time. Your worship, should we move forward to any consideration under municipal or central sewer and water, that would be a separate servicing arrangement that will be required. That would be a joint discussion with the town of Oxford along a boundary extension for 7 Leeway. Cost sharing arrangements would have to be made. Environmental implications, no sensitive environmental or core issues in this area, and the review of our Schedule B under the land use bylaw and the municipal planning strategy. Again, it would be, if it's in the future, it's going to be, on-site services to provide sewer to the sites. That will all be done through an approved qualified professional. And if it's going to be municipal sewer services, then that will be reviewed by our Director of Public Works, as well as in conjunction with a conversation with the town of Oxford. Alternatives is, as always presented, your worship, is to defer the matter to a later date. But as a reminder, first reading is just allowing us to move to the public hearing stage in the process. So again, that was a mouthful, but should any questions or clarifications be required, be happy to do that right at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Boone, for that. Appreciate your work. So there's a recommended motion that council approve first reading of amendment to Schedule A of the land use bylaw to rezone PID 25446477 from rural resource to low density residential, and to schedule public hearing for the proposed amendment at a future council meeting. Someone like to make that motion, please? Moved by Councillor Gilroy, seconded by Councillor Goodwin. Any questions or comments for Mr. Boone in regards to this agenda item? Seeing none, call with question. All those in favor say aye. Aren't reminded nay. Motion is carried. Thank you, sir. 5.2, second reading of the request to rezone Felder Shore Properties Limited and Gulf Shore. Mr. Boone, Director of Planning, if he's going to speak to this as well.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. This is second reading. So this rezoning project was before council twice before first reading, as well as the public hearing. At the time of the public hearing, there was no additional input received in writing or from anyone that would have made presentations at the public hearing. Sorry, not public meeting, but public hearing. This is a redevelopment and rezoning. Sorry, rezoning from agricultural to recreational residential. Similar to the conversation we just had in the open hearing, Your Worship. This is to permit the development of residential lots and utilizing a private road approach as well. So this is kind of the final part of the process, Your Worship, where council gives due consideration to the rezoning. So happy to answer any specific questions, but I think I've kind of spoke to this in more detail at the public hearing.
Thank you, sir. So the recommended motion is that council approve second reading of amendment to Schedule A of the land use bylaw to rezone PID 25451535 from agricultural to recreational residential. Someone like to make that motion, please? Made by Councilor Telling, second by Councilor Redmond. Any questions or comments for Mr. Boone in regards to this agenda item? Seeing none, call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aren't reminded nay. Motion is carried. Mr. Boone, you're busy today. Lots of work.
Hopefully we're hiring a planner tomorrow and Friday.
5.3 on the agenda, second reading of proposed rezoning for Sergeant and Perrin property in Parisboro. Mr. Boone, please.
Your worship, can I declare a conflict? of interest?
Thank you, Councilor Goodwin. Appreciate that. Yep. Thank you. We'll call you back. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Second reading again for this was a little bit more complicated because it was multiple PIDs, as you remember from the first reading and the public hearing. Several PIDs and lots being rezoned, rural industrial current zone, and they were moving to two different zones. What we were trying to do at the time on these particular properties, Your Worship, and to members of council, was to get the zoning that would align with the intents of the owners and developers of the property, but also to put some of the existing land uses, which were agricultural, into an appropriate zone. So the first PIDs that were to go to agricultural zone was to put them more in line with their actual current use, land use in the community. And the others was to move to country residential zone, which permits some residential development that would not be permitted in the rural industrial zone. Your Worship, this went through a full public hearing, as you're aware. At the time of the public hearing, we only had one inquiry that was a phone call inquiry, answered the questions of the citizen. They had indicated at the time that if they had any concerns, they would come to the public hearing, which they did not. And so the only difference in this report, Your Worship, from the original first reading and the public hearing is we've better defined the location. So we've now put locations so folks will know exactly where this was, between 527 and 599 Main and north and east of 1983 Western Avenue. And when we advertise this, Your Worship, should council give second reading, any advertisements that go in the paper for the required appeal period will be very clear about the location. We'll be a little more specific in that ads, and that will be with all ads and reports future. And that's been done in consultation with the clerk and our CAO, Your Worship. So unless there's specific questions, this is one that staff had previously recommended and had gone through the full public hearing process.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Boone. Just before we get into it, I just want to say thanks. A lot of work for those PIDs to be reorganized and rezoned. So it's really appreciated by us, council, and I know by the landowner as well. So there's a recommended motion that council approve second reading of an amendment to Schedule A of the land use bylaw for the following rezoning. So what I would ask council for agreement on, so there are 10 PIDs there, 10 PIDs. And if you're okay with that, I'd ask for a motion to move them in block. They're in your package. They will be available for public for review. So if there's any issue over that. So I'd ask for, if council's agreeable to that. If not, I need someone to tell me that if you're okay with it. Deputy Mayor Joseph, you want to say? Oh, okay. So if council okay, so you're making a motion for all 10 PIDs in one motion. Deputy Mayor Joseph, seconded by Councilor Gilroy. Any questions or comments around this agenda item for Mr. Boone? Deputy Mayor Joseph.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, it's just a comment. Looking through this whole thing the other day and now and today, I also want to say thanks to Mr. Boone and his staff for moving a lot of this stuff along. And also, you like a glass of water.
I'm good right now because Justin's not here to deliver it. So
okay.
Yeah,
thank you, Your Worship.
our water guys.
But no, I
Thank
want to thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, Mr. Boone, regards this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aren't you minded nay? Motion's carried. Thank you, sir. I think you're off the hot seat now, Mr. Boone. Welcome back, Councilor Goodman.
oh, we changed. Okay.
Yeah.
Peter tells me I'm moving. That's all right. Okay, that's good. Yeah, thank you.
5.4 on the agenda, carbon surcharge policy repeal. Mr. McCracken, our deputy CEO, please.
Thank you, Worship. So a review of the carbon surcharge fund policy, its current policy council was conducted at a recent senior management meeting. We covered the basis of this committee of the whole meeting recently, but I'll cover the gist of it again and recommend a motion in your package. So the carbon surcharge fund policy was established in 2015. The objective was to support small scale initiatives by essentially deducting $5 as a carbon surcharge from each travel claim submitted by councillors and senior management. The money was collected and placed in a fund. The intent of the policy is to award the money collected to one particular organization annually. Since 2015, we've amassed $3,180. That's up until June. We have more than that, I suspect. Since then, over a span of 8 years, no money has been dispersed. The administrative time required to implement the policies appears to be the biggest obstacle. Staff feel the policy is not being implemented and should be repealed, although the policy has not been at the forefront. Climate change work has been and continues to be through a number of projects listed in your package there, including solar PV systems, exploration of utility scale solar, electrical generating facility, geothermal energy research project, clean energy finance program, Cumberland Straight Storm Surge study, exploration of locations for electric vehicle charging stations, and a review of the last 2 years through our grant programs. We've provided around $73,000 worth of funds to energy efficiency projects. So we're in the game of climate and energy for sure. If approved, the balance of the fund would be dispersed through our granting process next spring. There's no negative implications in terms of environment. The organization receiving the funds would apply money towards green energy project in the municipality. If approved, we'll communicate to staff the repealed policy and will be removed from our website. Alternatives council can consider is to direct staff to continue with the policy, or council can instruct staff to use the balance of the funds for another reason. And there's a recommended motion in your package.
Thank you, sir. So the recommended motion is that council approve repeal of carbon surcharge fund policy and direct staff to allocate the balance of the fund to a local nonprofit organization to assist with the green energy project as part of the 2024-25 grants organization. Someone like to make that motion, please? Moved by Councillor Redmond, seconded by Councillor McCormick. Any questions or comments for this agenda item for Mr. McCracken? Seeing none, call for question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minded nay. Motion is carried. Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Agenda item 6.1, sale of surplus property 242 McGee Street, Spring Hill. Mr. Boone, I believe you're going to speak to this as well.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I'm just going to go old school newspaper, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Thank you, Worship. This property was brought before council before it was deemed surplus. We were asked to look at a process of disposal. The property was duly advertised for sale through tender. We actually used public notices in the paper as well as on our website. Entertained a few phone calls on the application, or sorry, on the tender. It was approved to go forward as a tender, subject to receiving bids that would be seen as market value. So an open process, as I mentioned, was brought forward. 242 McGee. At the time of closure of the tender, we only had one bid, your worship. That was from a Mr. Mark Habib for a value of $12,000 plus applicable HST and any closing costs as per the tender advertised. Your worship, this is a property that has development potential. I think it's in keeping through the public process of getting a fair market offer on the property. And at this point, the recommendation is that council approve the sale that was done through the tender, and we would move forward. Happy to answer any questions on it, your worship. But at this point, I think it's a good project to move forward on. So
thank you, sir. So the recommended motion is that council approve the sale of 242 McGee Street, Spring Hill, PID 25239336 to Mark Habib for a value of $12,000 plus applicable HST. If Mayor Joseph moving that, seconded by Councilor McCormick. Any questions or comments in regards to this agenda item? Seeing none, call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aren't minded nay. Motion is carried. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
6.2 IT supervisor position, Mr. McCracken, Deputy CAO.
Thank you, Worship. So staff conducted a review of IT human resources recently, including in other municipalities. And we've also contracted an external cybersecurity audits, and our findings are the basis of the RFD in your package. The Municipality of Cumberland has IT infrastructure to support approximately 100 end users, so 100 people across our distributed network of facilities, which include 3 service centers, a multipurpose community center, campground, multiple treatment plants, public works buildings, library, as well as supporting remote work capabilities through VPN. As you can see from the list in your package as well, we have a very significant and I would say complex technical environment. It includes everything from internet to laptops to cell phones to firewalls and servers and backup servers and printers and you name it. In terms of IT, we have it. And the above list demonstrates the extent of our commitments, I guess, to IT and a requirement to IT in today's work and service provision world. To support the fabric of IT infrastructure and services, we currently employ 1 full-time desktop help and support administrator. You would have probably met Evan, and he does a great job, and he assists with the daily IT support across the municipal network. His primary focus is on tickets. So if I have an issue, I type into the IT support email, goes to Evan, and he issues a ticket, and he prioritizes those, and he gets to everything as soon as he can. Sometimes he needs to punt those tickets to an external partner of ours, which I'll talk about in a minute, and they'll deal with those requests, depending on how busy he is or the nature of the request. His time is spent, mostly on email, printer, phone, laptop, and internet issues. So day-to-day issues that arise from staff council. Ticket volume can vary. There's a table there. It shows sort of the ebb and flow of that, but over a steady period of time, the more IT requirements we have and the more people we hire and the more, software and hardware we add to our system, the more tickets we're going to get. And it's increased steadily over the last year or so. Looking at industry standards, it's not just about, fixing an issue in, 5 minutes. It can take up to an hour on average. And, 60% of these need follow-up. And a lot of these aren't fixed in the same day. So the ticket numbers don't capture, people grabbing Evan as he goes by and say, can you fix this for me, or phone calls to his cell phone and that sort of thing. So it's a lot of work for one person, and that position is stretched quite thin. We also currently contract iRemote, as mentioned, and they do a lot of our network and backup and monitoring, but they also do some desktop help for us. We billed about $35,000 for their services since this time last year, probably more than that now. These figures are from last month. And it's critical we retain them, but it'd be nice to have another body who can provide backup, day-to-day support, but also can provide sort of a vision for IT in this complex world, that's the IT world we're in. And as you can see, we spend quite a bit of, $90 an hour, for iRemote to be our backup in IT support as it is. So in June, I attended the Provincial Associated Municipal Administrators Conference and sort of asked around, how many staff do you have for IT? There's a table there. So, in the room, they said 2 to 5, depending on the size of the municipality. Also afterwards, I sort of cherry picked some municipalities sort of like size or geographically or proximity, such as Amherst, of course, is there. And all those municipalities employ at least 2 positions. And the ratios vary from 30 to 1 to 68 to 1. and ours currently is approximately 100 to 1. We also conducted a cybersecurity review, and we're at I would say an infant stage. I wouldn't say we're newborn, but I would say we're maybe toddler stage in terms of our cybersecurity, and we rank 2 out of 5. And we really, you know, as you know, there's been some breaches in public entities over the last number of months, including the city of St. John, town of Kentville or the county of Kings, one of those down in the valley. And we've Nova Scotia Health Authority and province of Nova Scotia. So not that, you know, adding another position is going to eliminate the risk, but it's going to address the risk better than having one person on staff. So we're proposing, and we've had 12 high priority recommendations in our audits that need some significant attention. So we're proposing a new position. It's critical in moving forward, I think, to meet the needs of an evolving, progressive municipality. The financial implications are outlined there, and this is for calculation purposes, approximately, you know, using level 7, step 3. Could be level 7, step 1, a little less, but around $95,000 commitments. For this fiscal year, we would find some savings through, you know, vacancies, and we would savings from not having to use iRemote services for desktop help. And then for subsequent years, we would need to build the 95,000 into, or take it into account in our operating budget. So if approved, the position will be advertised and filled as soon as we can. And there's a motion for consideration in your package.
Thank you, sir. So, thank you. The recommended motion is that council approve the creation of an IT services supervisor position. If someone would like to make that motion, please. Moved by Councilor O'Telling, second by Councilor Gilroy. Any questions or comments for Mr. McCracken in regards to this agenda item? Seeing none, call with question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you, sir, for that. Appreciate it.
Take the heat off you, your worship. You won't have to help us with that anymore.
Did anyone hear anything?
This password's that great, so I level the comfort's going up by the minutes here.
Thank you, your worship,
Thank
and,
you,
and
sir.
council for your support. It's much
Did you
appreciated.
hear that?
Very well, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. 6.3, community engagement coordinator, Mr. McCracken, can you speak to this as well?
Thank you, worship. So similarly, we're being called to act in or support different, I guess, support our community in different ways, new ways, perhaps than we have in the past. Municipalities play a part, of course, in the quality of life of our residents. Equity inclusion creates more sustainable communities where people from all walks of life have the right to participate fully in our municipal services, whether it's a recreation program or, you know, even coming into our service counter or what have you. Municipalities can be leaders in this work and engaging in many promising practices that are making a difference. We're being called upon, as I said, to play a larger role in removing barriers to citizen engagement and participation. In recent years, Nova province has taken the lead in legislating, change, including 2 acts that outline municipal responsibilities relating to accessibility, equity, and anti-racism. The first is the Accessibility Act, which was passed in 2018. Which recognizes accessibility as a human right and sets out a goal of an accessible province by 2030. This is an important piece of legislation. As such, and they began rolling out their standards for compliance to public service bodies. Of course, municipalities, libraries, universities were some of the first ones that were prescribed to implement the standards. So this is required, and we've already developed, we established a committee a couple of years ago, developed our first plan, and it was completed in 2022. Progress on implementation, however, has been slow due to not having someone to dedicate their time to this work. Similarly, there was a recent dismantling Racism and Hate Act. And in 2022, it was passed by an all-party committee. Similarly, public sector bodies will be prescribed to create plans and implement them and monitor them, do community engagements to create those plans, and then every 3 years renew those plans. Also, we have our commitment to the Intermunicipal Poverty Reduction Advisory Committee, which has developed a strategic plan, as you know. The development of the plan in the terms of reference clearly says that a plan is required. There are many actions in the plan requiring staff time, which have been outlined in previous council meetings, as well as the report that was generated. Well, there are some quick wins in terms of, we're already supporting some of those actions to fully implement the plan to its fullest. This position could significantly move the needle in that regard. Also, with our engagement with our Mi'kmaq leaders as part of our Farsborough Playground project, it's a nice example of the importance of engaging our Indigenous population in our work. Although we don't have a duty to consult like other levels of government, it's just good relationship building and basic principles of municipal governance to do so. So municipalities being called to do significant work in the above 4 areas. Currently, staff resources are stretched to move forward in a coordinated and significant way. It's our view that additional human resources are required. Alternatively, staff will have to potentially stop doing some of the work we're doing now, which are guided by our organizational priorities already. So the proposed new position would be community engagement coordinator, and they would be responsible for coordinating our commitments to the above 4 and potentially other areas of work. The role requires an understanding of equity, diversity, inclusion issues. So if you ever sort of worked in that field, it's not something that's easily understood. There's terminology and really requires someone with some experience to fill that role. The cost to hire the coordinator would be level 5, step 3 as a basis, would be approximately $78,000 a year. For this fiscal, let's assume we'd require, if we get on and hired quickly, we'd have maybe a quarter of the total expenses by the time we hire somebody, so approximately $19,500, and we could cover this by staff vacancies throughout this year. Moving forward, again, we have to consider it in our operating budget. If approved, the position will be advertised and filled as soon as we can. And there's a motion in your package for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So the recommended motion is that council approve the creation of a community engagement coordinator position. Someone like to make that motion, please. Moved by Councillor O'Telling, second by Deputy Mayor Joseph. Any questions or comments for Mr. McCracken in regards to this agenda item? Seeing none, call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
6.4 solid waste collection routes. Mr. Walkrest was to speak to this, Director of Public Works, but I believe Mr. Harris is going to speak on his behalf of this agenda item.
I am, Your Worship. Thank you very much. As folks, as council will recall, council recently awarded the contract, a 5-year collection contract for solid waste collection to Miller Solid Waste, who has been our contractor for many, many years. As part of that procurement process, we issued the tender on a joint basis with the town of Amherst. And one of the bids that was received from Miller was an alternate bid that suggested that they could save some money by making some changes to the route and the collection days and the manner of collecting it. So council will recall that last week Jeff Traver was here along with a colleague and presented on a number of those changes. And I guess, chief among those was moving to collecting all streams once every 2 weeks rather than collecting different streams on alternate weeks. There were also some proposed changes to the days of the week that waste would be collected in certain areas. We've had no further discussions with Miller yet at the staff level. In order to move the issue forward and begin that process, staff are suggesting that council endorse these changes as outlined in last week's meeting. Worship, there's a suggested motion in the package.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor Gilroy.
Thank you, your worship. I would like to make a motion that we defer this to the October committee of the whole meeting. So we can have some further discussion among council members, if you please.
Thank you, sir. So recommend motion, seconded by Councillor Redmond. So moved by Councillor Gilroy, seconded by Councillor Redmond, that we defer this issue to the committee of the whole meeting in October for further discussion and decision. Any questions or comments in regards to the agenda item and or the motion? Councillor O'Toole.
Just wanted to say, I know that I asked about the Monday and switching. And is that something that staff can get feedback on before our October committee of the whole meeting?
Switching to where?
Switching Amherst
Oh, okay.
for Tuesday for Monday. I did email the group about it.
So, yep, thank you, worship. So just on a technical point first, on a motion of deferral, the only debate allowed is as to the, is it the date of the when it's going to be deferred to. But I have had a preliminary discussion with Amherst, and there isn't an interest in change. So I guess we can continue that conversation.
Okay, so thank you, Councillor O'Toole. So any questions or comments in regards to the motion? Seeing none, call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minded nay. Motion is carried. Thank you. 6.5, purchase of property, Parisville, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, your worship. Sorry. Switch gears here 1 sec. So as council and members of the public will recall and be aware, one of council's priorities is a review of the fire service, and we're currently working toward, in consultation with a number of fire chiefs, implementation of what we're calling the hub model of fire service, which involves supporting, investing in 4 central stations, we'll call up hub station, and those are in Trumanville, Spring Hill, Parisbro, and Pugwash. Council in this year's capital budget earmarked $1.5 million for fire apparatus. The most recent council meeting, council approved a capital budget with respect to new fire halls in Spring Hill and Parisbro of just over $6 million. And I say those things just to highlight the fact that this is a priority of council, and the organization is backing that up with significant investment. So, and I can also say before I get to the Parisbro station site that we have acquired a parcel of land in the Spring Hill Industrial Park, which would be the location for the Spring Hill Fire Hall when it's built. And I would further say, I'll get to this in just a second, but I would further say that earlier this week, we issued the RFP for design build for 2 fire stations, one in Parisbro and one in Spring Hill. That's a closing date of sometime in sometime in November, early November. So we're looking forward to receiving bids on that design build moving forward. So this, now getting to this issue, this item is an important piece of that. So the recommendation is with respect to the purchase of a piece of land in Parisbro to be the site of the future new fire hall in Parisbro. And it's a 2.85 acre lot located at the corner of Vale Road and Templar Street. And the price that's been negotiated is $100,000 plus applicable HST. And tell you and advise you that we've done due diligence on the fair market value of this property, and have had a commercial property value appraisal done that certainly supports this purchase price. The funds for purchase are included in the revised capital budget of $6.357 million, I think is the number. What's left for today is for council to consider the approval of the sale of the purchase and the agreement of purchase and sale, and to authorize the mayor and CAO to sign the agreement of purchase and sale on behalf of council to acquire the property. So, your worship, there's a recommended motion in the document that was circulated, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. The recommendation is that recommended motion is that the purchase of 2.85 acre property located at the corner of Farrell Road and Temple Parish Road, PID number 252-15294 for the price of $100,000 plus applicable HST funded from the capital budget be approved by council, that the mayor and CEO will be authorized to sign the agreement of purchase and sale to acquire this property. Someone like to make that motion, please? Moved by Councillor Goodwin, seconded by Councillor Gilroy. Any questions or comments for this agenda item in regards to this issue for Mr. Harris? Seeing none, call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Redmond, sorry, did I miss you? Sorry.
Just on the fire,
Yeah.
where do we stand on the RFPs for the trucks for Wallace and Pugwash? Because those were supposed to go out a couple of weeks ago.
As late as today, Director Cole and I were talking about acquisition of fire trucks. There are a few complications. Like everything else, prices aren't what they used to be. So we're trying to make some adjustments. So
But the RFPs will still go out.
That has not been finalized yet. We are still working through the type of apparatus and the cost and the timing of purchasing.
Okay, but we as council did make a motion to approve the purchase of the two vehicles, right?
I don't believe so. Not in the budget. Yep, there's an allocation in the budget of $1.5 million. So we've already purchased or are in the process of purchasing a couple of trucks. And these additional trucks, we're working through the details of the RFP and what the specs look like and how much money it's going to cost.
So I could just say, if very similar to the fire department buildings themselves, we budget so much, and if it looks like can't meet the budget with the RFP because it requires a response from the business community, probably have to come back to council for a change if that's needed. So I think Mr. Cole's working on that now. So if we require more money we budget for, we may have to come back to council for additional funds. Okay.
As late as
Answer
this
the question,
afternoon, we were
Councilor.
talking about that. So
Okay.
One more question. Is there an opportunity if it goes above what we budgeted for, that the individual departments can contribute the extra?
I can't imagine they couldn't if they wanted to. Not so sure they want to, but go ahead.
yeah, so
Well, it was kind of my understanding that some of the things that they wanted on it were extras that they wanted. It wasn't necessarily something that was required on the truck.
So therein lies some of the complication. You know, you try to spec a standard, and I don't want to go too far with this, I guess. So you try to spec a standard truck, and you know, through the back and forth and to and fro with 16 different fire chiefs, there are 16 different preferences and impressions of what's necessary and what's needed. Where we ended up this afternoon was that we would get some advice on what a standard spec should look like for a pumper tanker, what a standard spec should look like for a rescue truck, and go from there. So we haven't finished that conversation yet because of the money and the specifications and the differing requirements. Look, quite frankly, we're trying to standardize a lot of things in the fire service with council support and with staff support. And this is one of the issues we deal with. And we also want to be fair and to be seen to be consulting with fire chiefs, making sure that there's financial accountability And but there's, we just don't have a blank check with respect to some of these issues. So that's where we're at. And when I said it was complicated, it's complicated and we're not done yet. And that's just where we're at.
I thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilor Redmond. Where were we? 6. Thank you. So 6.6 agenda date of October committee of the whole, that was added as well. Mr. McCracken, you're gonna speak to that, please?
Thank you, worship. The October, sorry, committee of the whole meetings normally are held the third Wednesday of the month. Several employees are registered for the fall conference for the Association of Municipal Administrators, which is taking place that same week, which creates a scheduling conflict for, I would say, 5 or 6 staff members who regularly attend these meetings. The conferences are held twice a year. These are the primary professional development opportunities for several of these staff members in the administration and finance departments. If approved, notice of meeting changes shall be provided to the public on the municipality's website and social media accounts and shared with local media. And there's a recommended motion in your package. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So the recommended motion is that council reschedule the October 2023 committee of the whole meeting from the third Wednesday of the month to the second Wednesday of the month. Any questions or comments, Councilor McCormick? Oh, yeah. Moved by Councilor McCormick, seconded by Deputy Mayor Joseph. Any questions or comments regarding this agenda item for Mr. McCracken? Councilor Redmond.
Just to note that if we were following our policy, we wouldn't have to change that. Just a statement.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll call for the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you, sir. That is brings us down to information items for council recognition. So I believe Councilor Goodwin can speak to this.
Thanks, your worship. I would just like to recognize local Amber McCully as well as Amy Page. After the untimely death of young local mother, Maggie Lynn Cameron, Amber McCully has put together a massive online auction to provide support for Maggie's 2 young daughters and their grandmother as they grieve. The support of the community is very evident in the amount of auction items that are currently up for bids. The auction concludes September 28th, so there's still time to get your bids in. Amy Page, Maggie's cousin, also started a GoFundMe campaign for the children to support the family as well during this difficult time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Councilor Goodwin. That brings us to the end of our agenda for today's meeting. So I'd ask for motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councilor Gilroy. We are adjourned. Thank you, folks. To this, to ask council to stay back for a moment, please, if you could, after staff leave. Thank you. Yep. You didn't stay in.
Yeah.